We have this tweet from Elon, and he says, an anonymous source just sent me this from Disney. It is mandatory institutionalized racism and sexism.
It is.
Disney general entertainment content inclusion standards. Ladies and gentlemen, we got a leak from inside the house showing how Disney is racist. I'd like to give a shout out to Mark Cuban. This guy, his response to being exposed as a racist was to claim that he's being attacked by people who are anti-Semitic on X. And I'm just like, that's kind of, Mark, I got to be honest, that's kind of the Kevin Spacey argument. Like, Kevin Spacey gets accused of rape, and then he's like, I'm gay. And it's like, yes, well, that may be, but you were accused of rape. So write this way to jail, sir, and then we'll have a trial. You know, and then I guess the witnesses, like several of the witnesses or something happened, and, you know, like we went, what's like witnesses or victims died or something like that.
Oh, yeah.
But
Kevin
I think
Spacey.
I think he was acquitted, wasn't he?
I think so.
Is that
all of his accusers passed away, I believe.
I don't think that's true.
Or maybe one that didn't.
There were a couple, I think, that like, but I think he was acquitted. And so if he was like, that it is what it is. Like, you know, if that's what the courts find, I don't know what else I can say. Doesn't mean I completely agree with it, but I'm not going to attack a guy who went through the system in that way. That being said, back to Mark Cuban, who quite literally fights tooth and nail to be like, I want to hire based on race. And he's screaming it. And then people are like, dude, that's racist. And he's like, you hate Jews. It's like, okay, dude. I mean, it's not literally what he did. He just immediately started highlighting all the tweets that were anti-Semitic instead of addressing the arguments that were against him.
The anti-Semitic screech is like the most annoying one right now for me. I've had friends that are like, Ian, be careful talking about Israel because people will think you're anti-Semitic. I'm like, yeah, right. Okay. I'm still going to talk about Israel because I've been talking a lot about how it got created. I don't want to derail into this topic.
We are not derailing into that. So back to Disney.
But
we have this post from Elon Musk. Standard A on-screen representation. At least 3 of the following 5 areas need to be met to fulfill Standard A. Characters. 50% or more of regular and recurring written characters from underrepresented groups. Well, in Hollywood, that would mean white people, I think, right? 50% or more of regular recurring actors come from underrepresented groups. Secondary characters. Meaningful inclusion, blah, blah, blah. You get it. Series premise. Integration of underrepresented groups in overall themes and narratives, episodic storytelling, ongoing meaningful integration of underrepresented groups and episodic themes, blah, blah, blah. Standard B, creative leadership. Are they doing this? Every single one of these say underrepresented groups. Every single one. Every single one of these. Underrepresented. Okay.
Did they say underrepresented or is it historically underrepresented?
Critical context, here we go. When evaluating whether a group, this is going to be fun, is underrepresented. It says, anyone involved in hiring decisions is prohibited from asking candidates and talent about their actual or perceived race, religion, color, orientation, sex orientation, I believe it says, gender identity, military or veteran status, age, disability, or any other legally protected categories. Well, okay, hold on. If you are a casting director who needs to find an underrepresented group, but you can't ask about any of those things, then I think there are only a few underrepresented groups you can actually cast, and they are going to be atypical. For instance, let's see. You want an underrepresented group in your movie, but you can't ask about any of those things. But you can't ask if they're a furry. And they're certainly underrepresented, right? And what other groups are underrepresented? Race car drivers, okay? Yeah. I mean, I don't see big political action committees supporting, race car drivers.
Bull riders.
Bull riders.
Right?
Yeah, I was going.
So that's the way we can go. I do think it's funny to say military or veteran status.
Yeah. Like
that. and they're like, it is funny how they're saying you have to include these things, but you can't ask about it. Yeah.
Ronan McDaniel's out at the RNC.
We'll get into that one for sure.
Yeah, look.
Wow.
There is clearly the desire to have more racial awareness, which makes people more racist. The reason that people had a problem with CRT, with critical race theory, that this is kind of like gone away as a topic or as a hot topic recently because, topics move along. But the thing that CRT does is it produces people that have a critical racial consciousness. They see race before anything else. So the results of CRT is stuff like the DIE stuff, the diversity, inclusion, and equity stuff, the results are you look at race first, and that all the studies that have ever been done about this, it just makes people more racist. It makes people want to divide more. It makes people see separate things. It makes people look at people as the other. It is a terrible, terrible way to look at people. It is illiberal, and it is against everything that our country is founded on, which is the idea that individual people are all created equally and they are to be treated equally under the law. All of this stuff flies in the face of that. DEI and all of this stuff is not the continuation of the civil rights movement. It is totally antithetical to anything liberal.
Well, that's the argument from a lot of people, and I agree, is that the Civil Rights Act created the pathway for all of this.
That's an argument that could be made, because technically you shouldn't have any of the stuff that applies to the private sector in the Civil Rights Act, about you can't discriminate based on race or anything. Technically, that stuff shouldn't apply to the private sector. If you want to make those kind of arguments in the public sector, in the government and stuff like that, you can make an argument. But technically, as long as you have the freedom to associate, you should be able to say, I don't want to be around those people. But once the government starts getting involved in that, then that's setting the precedent that the government has the right to get involved in that.
I wonder what the statute of limitations is on this, because I don't know if it matters considering the company I worked for doesn't exist anymore, but it was an ABC News joint venture, Fusion, and they discriminated against me based on my race. They had a thing called the Black and Brown Forum, where
What?
yeah, it's something that I think they still do it, and they interviewed like Hillary Clinton and Bernie Sanders, and I was one of their like star talent reporters, and when they had the event, I wasn't made aware. I knew it was going on and I didn't hear anything. And I was like, I'm just going to do my thing. Like, I'm not somebody who really complains. When the event happened, they brought in like 3 of the top talent they had for the company, Fusion. And then they cast a black guy who was from New York, who was like a comedian and well-known. And I'm like, look, I don't care. Like, you can do whatever you want. It's your company. I literally don't care. I'm doing my thing. I'm getting paid. However, when all of this stuff started coming up, and I was like, because the guys who run the company were not woke. They didn't know or care. They were just like, I don't know, this is what we're told, the marketing people and the young people. But I was explicitly told by the president of the company that I look too white to be a part of that program. And I'm like, man, you had a chance to get like a mixed race Asian guy in the program.
What year was this?
2016.
Yeah, this is November 19, 2015 is when Fusion announced they were going to broadcast with the Iowa Brown and Black Presidential Forum.
There you go. And I was like, I come from a mixed race family. I was like, what? And, I wonder. I mean, maybe it's too late. I don't know if I would care all that much to be involved, but I do kind of feel like the reason I bring it up is like, this is way too long ago. It's like a decade ago.
Yeah,
I don't think there's any.
Are better left lying dead.
Well, I just think it's probably too long ago. But I can at least say this: this is a company that was half owned by ABC News, and they have been doing this for a long time.
Yeah,
Elon's looking for people. ABC is a subsidiary of Disney. Elon's looking for people to join in. Maybe
that's what I'm saying. It's been 9 years. So. Actually, it's been 8 years because it's only a few months after November when they did it. But at the very least, I don't think I would be involved in any way. I want to make sure it is known. I experienced this. It literally happened. The company was insanely racist and sexist. It was insane how racist they were. There was one instance where the news team was going over a story about Ghost in the Shell. This is when Scarlett Johansson was going to be playing the main character from Ghost in the Shell. And they were like, why is a white woman playing a Japanese woman? And I said, actually, she's a robot. And actually, it's transhumanist. A core concept of Ghost in the Shell is being able to transfer to different bodies, different sexes, different races. And they're like, nah, they're just racist. So we're going to call it racist instead. Like, it had to be viewed through that lens no matter what. And I'm like, okay. Yeah, right.
Makes everything
and
worse.
I will say this, Elon, please look into this. The editor-in-chief, Alexis Madrigal, had a Twitter banner at the time that said "Down with Whiteness." Yeah,
and this stuff has
and a black fist.
This stuff has been being churned out of colleges every year for at least a decade now. That means 10 years of graduating classes from all over the country. People that have this kind of ideology built in have been getting jobs, or maybe they haven't been getting jobs, but at least some of them have been getting jobs in human resources departments all over the country. This is such a massive. It was a massive problem a decade ago, and now it's reached the point where it is likely that the United States will not get out of this the same and be the same country.
We've got to acknowledge. Were you going to say something?
Just that Yuri Bezmenov said it was one generation was all you needed to demoralize, and then you could destabilize a country. And you're saying like 10 years, so another 5 years.
Yeah.
I don't know.
And people are still arguing as to if this is even happening.
Yeah.
We're all born equal, legally equal, but we're not all the same, and we all come from different nutrition backgrounds. And if our parents were poor, they didn't have access to nutrition, maybe their brains weren't as developed, so their child's brains aren't as developed. And then if I come from poverty, maybe I'll be poor too, and I won't have good brain matter. My kids won't either. So there's like, then when you're like, you throw all these kids in school and you're like, learn math. The kids that don't have the brain matter, that come from poverty, struggle because they don't have the mental capacity. But that doesn't mean you take those kids and you shove them into CEO positions just so that you have enough color, like the same color or the right color. Like, you've also got to let people flounder. Like, it's the sad nature of reality. If people come from suffering, they've got to either figure it out for themselves. I mean, at least that seems to be the least worst way forward, is to let people do it on their own instead of force feed and force the system into. But I mean, I'm totally down with like the descendants of slaves in the United States had it, like, they come from generational poverty and lack of nutrition. Not everybody, but some of those families do. So that's a real problem. But I don't think forcing them into positions of power is the right way to solve for it, or to give them money. You know, you got to feed them. You know, you could argue like healthy food, but that would be like society wide. That wouldn't just be, you wouldn't just want to target little communities with good nutrition. You could. Maybe potentially, you know, food stamps tend to get people Pepsi. I've seen that you can buy Pepsi with food stamps. That's insane to me.
I agree. I mean, there's all kinds of problems with like entitlement programs and stuff like that. But the fundamental thing that you're talking about is whether or not people have, you know, the ability to, you know, provide sustenance for themselves. And I don't know that there's a significant amount of hunger in the United States to the point where it's affecting whether or not people like develop properly. Like, I get that happens in like North Korea. Like, you get people that are so malnourished, they don't, you know, they're 2 inches shorter than people in South Korea or whatever. But I don't know if that's happening in the U.S. Is it?
Well, I imagine after like 1860s, it was, people were pretty poor in the Depression. 7 million people died during the Great Depression.
I mean, that kind of stuff you're talking about is stuff that would happen now to people born now, though, right?
And now it's not that they don't have food, it's that they don't have nutrition. Like, a lot of the preservatives and stuff sold in the cheap food at the store is
it
like...
actually makes them obese.
Yes, which is also, that's not feeding the brain properly, in my opinion. Like, it's creating another struggle, because like I don't know if obesity is generational. Do obese parents tend to give birth to children that are prone to obesity?
They don't give birth to them, but obesity is behavior based. If you don't move enough and you don't exercise
the
enough,
habits
then
as
you're
well. Like the food that they get taught to eat when they're kids as well. Like, if they don't have the people telling them how to cook and what they should be cooking, and then they'll probably just eat prepackaged food their entire life, and that does happen all the time.
And then they raise their kids like that, and then those habits you develop at a really young age, you carry them forward with you, and then you teach your kids those bad habits unless you break that cycle.
Thanks for watching this clip from the Timcast IRL podcast. Hang out with us live Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. and become a member over at timcast.com for uncensored, members-only shows exclusive. Thanks for hanging out, and we'll see you all next time.